Pitch is the first of the four categories we're going to talk about. Pitch is the relative highness or lowness of a sound. What does that actually mean? Well, if you think about those vibrations that were moving through the air earlier to create a sound, sometimes those vibrations move at a faster frequency and sometimes at a slower frequency. In other words, sometimes the vibrations traveling through the air travel very quickly, and other times they travel very slowly. When the vibration is traveling at a slow frequency, it creates a low sound, a low pitch. When it's moving at a faster frequency, it creates a higher pitch. So, pardon my singing voice, but if I were to sing a particular pitch, ba, or ba, you can tell one of those pitches is higher than the other, and the other pitch is lower. The first one was higher for those of you who didn't hear it. Let me show you again. Ba, ba. So those two pitches are different sounds. One of them higher than the other because it's traveling at a faster vibration through the air towards your ear, and the other one lower. Now, there are different types of pitch. There's indefinite pitch and definite pitch. Indefinite pitch is when you hear like a crashing sound, cymbals being thrown together, a drum being beaten, anything hitting a wall. So you get the idea. It's something that's irregular. It doesn't have the same frequency traveling at a regular speed through the air. It's changing. And because it's changing, we hear a loud, obnoxious noise. That's an indefinite pitch. Music is almost entirely made up of definite pitches. Pitches with regular frequencies. So whether the frequency is fast or slow, it doesn't matter, as long as it's consistent. So when I was singing those pitches, ba, that pitch, since it stays the same, is a definite pitch with a definite regular frequency. A tone is a definite pitch. This is your vocab word. Definite pitch is just a little too complicated to say all the time. So when we want to talk about definite pitches, we call them tones. So this is a sound that has a regulated frequency, has a definite pitch. We call it a tone. Now, when someone is singing two different tones in a row, usually there is some sort of distance between the highness and lowness of those two pitches. That distance is called an interval. So for example, bum, bum, or bum, bum. So I would sing a lower pitch and then a higher pitch. The distance between those have labels, and we're not going to learn those labels for the purpose of this course because that's a little too complicated. But those particular distances I sang are all. Something else important to know about is the pitch range. This is pretty self-explanatory. The pitch range is the distance between the lowest note, the lowest tone that can be produced by an instrument or voice, and the highest tone that can be produced by an instrument or voice. It's a range of sounds. Okay? So if you look at a piano keyboard, even in this example, though it's a shorter keyboard, you can see that it has an ending note and a beginning note. The top and the bottom keys on the keyboard are the lowest and the highest pitches available to someone who's playing the keyboard. That is the pitch range of that keyboard. Music is made almost entirely from definite pitches, or tones, just like I said earlier. We do use indefinite pitches, but not very often, and usually only to exaggerate music or help it to create a particular excitement level. Tones are almost always organized into meaningful patterns, ones that we recognize as human beings as sounding good, as sounding calm, happy, sad. Those patterns are made up of intervals and series of tones that we call scales. A scale is simply a group of 7 tones or notes that we've organized into an enjoyable pattern. It's a grouping of notes we recognize as sounding good. It's what almost all music in the United States and in South and Latin America, it's what almost all people recognize as true music, and it's what we organize all of our music from. So composers, when writing pieces of music, use this series of 7 notes, use the intervals created between those 7 notes to create music for us. We're going to discuss this more and more throughout the semester, but I wanted you to know that a scale really does exist in music, and these patterns are going to come up more and more often throughout the semester as we relate different types of music back and forth to each other. If you want to know more about scales and the patterns we create out of tones, you can read more in chapter 1 of your book. It does talk about the different patterns and has you go through some vocal exercises to try and recognize the highness and lowness of pitch. Now it's time to listen to some music. I would like you guys to all open up listening example number 1. This is the first movement of a piano trio in E minor by Dmitri Shostakovich, a Russian composer from the 20th century of classical musicians. Start listening to the example and have these questions in mind. Can you hear the high pitches and the low pitches? Does it start off high or low? What happens when the other instruments enter? Can you hear the intervals created? Can you hear the scale patterns that might make this sound more like music other than just noise? Even if you can't define those patterns, recognize that because they are there, that's why we feel like this music is actually music. Are there any indefinite pitches, or is this piece entirely made up of tones? Ask yourself these questions while you listen to example 1.